Hey, what's up, everybody? It's James Freeman, and today I have an awesome feel-good story for you where a police officer put their hands on someone without probable cause or even reasonable suspicion, and that person defended themselves against this unlawful attack from the police officer. He was charged with attacking the cop, but today a jury acquitted him because she was the aggressor and he was the defender. The story begins when San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department gets a call about a domestic dispute at a home. She's the first person to arrive. She sees a male exiting the home and a female exit behind him with a knife in her hand. She decides to grab the male, not knowing who's the aggressor or what's going on, and tries to put his hands behind his back. As soon as he's grabbed by her, he chooses to defend himself. Check out the video.
The defense's claim that she wasn't lawfully performing her duties prior to the attack.
At first glance, the video might seem crystal clear. A suspect punching a San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputy several times, stealing her gun, and then firing as she runs away from him. However, a jury has found Ari Young not guilty of both attempted murder and assault with a firearm on a peace officer. The jury apparently didn't even have enough evidence to find him guilty of resisting arrest, battery on a peace officer, or even for removing the firearm. On those charges, the jury hung.
How can you be found guilty of resisting arrest when you're not under arrest? I mean, when the officer doesn't even have probable cause to arrest you, let alone reasonable suspicion to detain you, how can you resist arrest when you're not under arrest?
What was your first reaction when you got that news?
Disbelief.
Megan McCarthy suffered several injuries in the attack. It happened on September 4, 2019. McCarthy responding to a 911 call about a domestic disturbance at a home in Victorville involving Ari Young, who experts say suffers from schizophrenia.
As I'm walking up to the front door of that house, I see the front door open and out comes the male, the suspect, and he's followed by the woman, I'm assuming is the reporting party, and she has a knife in her hand. I walk around behind him and I put his hands at the small of his back, just tell him, relax, it's okay, what's going on, just to pat down his pockets for weapons, and that set him off.
She sees an unarmed man walk out of the home and then an armed woman walk out behind him. And she puts her hands on the unarmed man. And like she said, I was assuming that he was the offender. Assuming. So she doesn't know. So she's assumed that women don't attack men. And that because there's a domestic violence call, it must have been the man. So she makes the assumption and grabs the man, even though the woman is the one who's armed. Following the man, she tries to grab him and detain him. So she admits even right there, she didn't have reasonable suspicion. She had assumptions. She assumed that because they got a DV call, a man beat a woman. And despite the fact that she sees an unarmed man and an armed woman, she attacks the man.
And that set him off and began the assault. I turn and I run for the nearest cover I can find, which happened to be a bush. And I hear a gunshot go off, and I knew he was shooting at me.
So I think he went too far by firing the gun. But let me say this, if somebody attacks you, let's look at this as if she's not a police officer, because essentially what the jury realized is that she wasn't acting as a police officer because she didn't have probable cause or reasonable suspicion to put her hands on anybody. So she's acting just like any other person. So if we take off the badge and the silly costume, she's just a human being who put her hands on someone, showing that she had the intent to attack that person, and she's armed while doing it. So he defends himself, and I think it's completely justified to disarm a person who's already attacked you. What I personally would have done is disarmed her, taken the mag out, and cleared the weapon. Why he chose to fire the weapon, gone too far. He didn't actually fire the weapon at her, though. She went south, and he randomly fired the weapon northeast. So he wasn't firing at her, but it was certainly an unnecessary, negligent discharge of a firearm, and he was convicted of that. But they didn't convict him of attempted murder on a police officer because he just plain didn't shoot at her. As stupid as it was, he didn't shoot at her.
I hear a gunshot go off, and I knew he was shooting at me.
That's when other deputies respond, shoot the suspect, and take him into custody.
I'm wondering at this point, too, they say other deputies respond, shoot the suspect, and take him into custody. I don't know if he still has the gun in his hand right here, but you can see that he has his hands up, and I don't know if the gun is in his right hand or not. I'm curious if he had the gun in his hand when they shot him or if they shot him while his hands were up. I really don't know.
That's when other deputies respond, shoot the suspect, and take him into custody. A good portion of the incident caught on camera.
It does look bad when you look at it at first glance.
But defense attorney Rajma says because of the location of the bush where the deputy said she ran to get away, he argued that the suspect was not shooting at her.
We know exactly where she went, which was due south, and we know where he fired because there's a bullet hole in the garage, which shows he fired northeast, exactly in the direction he was walking, which is completely opposite of where she was.
But what about the other charges? Resisting arrest, removing the firearm, and battery on a peace officer. Well, to find someone guilty of those crimes, the law says the person being assaulted had to be lawfully performing their duties. While it might sound like just a technicality to some, Moline argues the deputy did not have reasonable suspicion.
The jury instruction that the court read to the jury basically says if you want to detain somebody, you have to have a reasonable suspicion that they're involved in criminal activity. And in this case, the issue was the initial detention of Mr. Young legal? If it's not, then he's not guilty. No matter, he could punch her 100 times and it wouldn't matter.
I was called to that house.
You hear that? I was called. We got a call. Look, these cops are going to start learning either the easy way or the hard way. I got a call is not a reason to show up and start attacking everybody. Do you understand? I get calls all the time about bad cops. I don't just show up and start grabbing them all and attacking them. You understand? You have to have legal cause, all right? Probable cause. There are certain standards that have to be met. You can't just do whatever you want because you got a call.
I was called to that house.
I was called.
I see a situation where there's a woman in such fear of her life. She is armed with a knife.
She's made this assumption, though. She's made an assumption that she's in such fear of her life that she's armed with a knife. How do we know that she's not armed with a knife because she's been beating the crap out of her boyfriend or husband, and now she's decided, screw it, I'm gonna kill him? There are way too many assumptions here and no reasonable suspicion.
I see a situation where there's a woman in such fear of her life. She is armed with a knife. I have every right to believe that maybe he has a weapon.
So you see someone who absolutely does have a weapon, and they're following somebody who visibly doesn't have a weapon, but you assume and you're going to go after somebody who might have a weapon instead of somebody who does have a weapon who's following an unarmed person. You're full retard, woman. You are full retard.
Ari Young was found guilty of negligent discharge of a firearm, and because he'd already been behind bars long enough to serve that sentence, was set free. As for McCarthy, she medically retired from the department last year.
I can only do what I can do. I'm a human being.
And a pretty stupid human being, too, who doesn't comprehend when it is and is not okay to put your hands on other people. And most of you police officers don't. You really seem to think that because you have a badge and you got a call, you can do whatever you want to whoever you want. And you can't. And you're going to learn the easy way or the hard way.
I can only do what I can do. I'm a human being. I tried to do my job to help this woman, and unfortunately, the suspect's actions dictated the rest, which we all saw.
Dear cops, you don't get to do whatever you want just because you got a badge and you got a call. If you really cared about officer safety, as you say all the time, you'd learn the law and stop unlawfully attacking people, because people are getting fed up with it. And you are putting yourselves in extreme danger when you unlawfully attack people. As people are starting to get so fed up with it, more and more and more people are going to start defending themselves against you, and they are going to be acquitted. I've seen what they're teaching you at the academy. I've seen what they're teaching you in training, and quite often, it's wrong. You guys are going to start getting in trouble more and more often for things that you thought were common procedure, for doing things that you were actually taught to do that are not just wrong, but illegal. Eventually, you guys are all going to have to stop making excuses for yourself and take responsibility for yourself and your own actions. Now, if you really do care and you're genuinely concerned about both serving the public while keeping yourself and other officers safe, I would say the number one thing to learn is what reasonable articulable suspicion actually is. If you don't have it, then you don't have lawful authority to do anything to anyone. evidence, because that is what is required for you to be able to detain somebody. And most of the instances that I cover and that we see where cops are getting in trouble is when you walk up and detain someone without RAS. Now, understanding that people have a right to defend themselves, it gets a lot more real. Almost every video that I cover where people defend themselves against cops, or where cops end up getting sued or fired, or at the very least disciplined, it started out with a cop doing something to someone without reasonable articulable suspicion. Understand that one concept, and I believe you will keep yourself out of a lot of trouble. If you don't have reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime, leave people alone. Guys, don't forget to check out the merch store. We got that Back the Blue Till It Happens to You, tank top versus wife beater, and a number of other awesome designs. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.